also want to bring in Manfred Lindenbaum. You bring certainly a long historical perspective to all of this. Can you explain how you as a child became a refugee?
Well, when I heard about this conference at the United Nations, my mind immediately went back to the Evian conference in France in 1938, at which the countries got together and in effect decided no matter what happens, we are not taking in any children refugees, we're taking in no refugees, led by the United States. One country after another said that. And 3 weeks later, 17,000 of us Jews in Germany were actually rounded up and taken to the border and chased across the border, actually physically chased across the border into Poland. And my fear was, is this going to be one of these conferences where everybody says nice things and in effect says it's going to continue as before? I didn't feel quite that pessimistic. I think that it's brought it back on the front page.
But explain what happened when you got to Poland. What was this Kindertransport?
Well, when I got to Poland, we actually by the way, when we got to Poland, within 36 hours, there were two relief organizations which came. One was HIAS and one was the Joint Distribution Committee. And they brought us things like, and I think refugees today can relate to that, they brought us things like bags to put straw in so we didn't sleep on the ground. And,
how old were you?
I was 6. Some of the people slept in the stables. We got in the fourth story of a burnt-out building with no facilities in it. And we were there for 10 months.
And then what was the Kindertransport?
The Kindertransport was when the German army was on the border. The Kindertransport was over because the United States at that point said that we're not taking in any Jewish children, and they couldn't get the bill out of committee. England had decided under great pressure to take in 10,000. They were already there, and at the last minute, as the German army was coming over, they got a few hundred of us onto a Polish warship, and that was took me and my brother to England. And I wouldn't let my sister on. She was 14, so she was murdered with the rest of my family.
And Raymond, Offenheiser, this issue of the children and the United States back then saying it would not take any more Jewish children, part of the problem in terms of coming together in agreement this year was that the United States was objecting to calls for no detention for children who are refugees and concerned about its policies towards Central American refugees on its southern border.
Yes, the United States actually objected to the final draft of the declaration in the middle of the summer and held up the final conclusion and vote for 2 days over this particular issue. And what they wanted to do was put in language that would allow the possibility of detention, particularly in reference to the Central American border cases where there is active detention going on. And this was a very specific move by the United States that really would require the entire process to stop and new language to be put in to allow for that.
And we're going to talk about that in our next segment. But I wanted to ask, our guest Manfred Lindenbaum about the comments of the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., who compared Syrian refugees to poisoned Skittles. He tweeted a graphic that said, if I had a bowl of Skittles and I told you just 3 would kill you, would you take a handful? That's our Syrian refugee problem. The company that makes Skittles then went on to tweet back saying, Skittles are candy, refugees are people. We don't feel it's an appropriate analogy. Your response when you heard Donald Trump Jr.?
I think it's absolutely horrible. It brings back the dark images of children being murdered. I can only feel horrible for him that he has such a twisted mentality that he's able to come out with that. He's a very poor individual.
And Mohammed Badran, he was talking about Syrian refugees. Your response?
Well, you know, firstly, like when I talk not only about Syrian refugees. I talk about all refugees, and I talk about how we also are contributing to the society where we are living, and how we want to eager to be part of the society. So I think this is a good response for what he said.
Mohammed, I'd like to ask you about your experiences, because you've been co-founding the Syrian Volunteers in the Netherlands. How has the Netherlands responded compared to other European countries to the refugee crisis?
Well, in the Netherlands, is quite you feel welcome. So there is at the moment actually really great initiatives coming from the citizens, coming from the Dutch locals. To help refugees with integration, but there's still sometimes challenges that you have to challenge in a new community and in new society. So but we are working on this. So but I think the Netherlands, I feel really grateful to be in such a country.
Well, we want to thank you all for being with us. We've been speaking with Manfred Lindenbaum, who is a survivor of the Holocaust. He and his brother made it over on the Kinder transport from Poland to England. The U.S. would not take any more Jewish children. Raymond Offenheiser is the head of Oxfam America. And Mohammed Badran, speaking to us from Washington, a refugee from Damascus, Syria, organized Syrian volunteers in the Netherlands. They're all gathered here in New York for this refugee summit at the United Nations.